Do you know when the order was denied?
I don't have that date.
Okay. The reason I am asking this is because on February 23rd, Mr. Zeldin.
Hello again.
Hello again. I hope you'll answer my questions. I'd appreciate it. The first is, on February 17th, the FBI told Citibank to freeze the GGRF funds. Did you have anything to do with that?
No.
Were you aware of that?
I was made aware of that.
Shortly after?
I think I got my update on that after Citibank instituted the freeze.
Okay. Do you know who the FBI was reporting to when it took that action?
All of the stuff that you went through a lot earlier that I mean, we're not, as you know, at the Judiciary Committee hearing. There are questions that I just don't have the answers.
Yeah, that's fine.
As far as a different
just
agency.
Say you don't know. That's fine. Were you aware that on February 18th, the criminal chief of the D.C. U.S. Attorney's Office resigned over this effort to get this freeze?
I learned about that reading about it in the newspaper.
Okay. So shortly after February 18th, when that became news?
Whenever it broke in the news.
Did you find out at some point that Mr. Martin had failed to get his order from the magistrate judge?
What would ask the question again? Did I learn what?
U.S. Attorney Martin
Right, I understand.
went to the magistrate judge seeking an order that would allow for the freeze of the Citibank held assets.
I was aware of that.
Okay.
After the fact.
Do you know when the order was denied?
I don't have that date.
Okay. The reason I am asking this is because on February 23rd, 2025, you said about the GGRF that the entire scheme, in my opinion, is criminal, which is a pretty strong word to use. And I'm trying to figure out what you knew when you said it was criminal. So you knew by then, at least, that the criminal chief had resigned over this issue. It's not clear whether you knew at that time that Martin's order had been rejected by the magistrate judge. Could you find that out for me? What was the timing of when you knew that Martin's order had been rejected by the judge in comparison to your statement that this was criminal?
Yeah, and would you like me to tell you everything that I knew when I made that statement?
Hello, fellow Americans. You're welcome back to another episode of The American Enigma. What we just watched should infuriate every single American who still believes in justice, transparency, and accountability. Today, I'm breaking down the bombshell revelations from the Senate hearing involving Mr. Zeldin, the EPA, DOJ, and an absolutely outrageous freeze of funds at Citibank, ordered by the FBI without judicial approval, oversight, or even proper legal process. Let me walk you through what the mainstream media won't tell you, and why this proves, once again, that our federal institutions are broken and weaponized against the will of the people. On February 17th, the FBI told Citibank to freeze a huge chunk of money, without a court order. Let me repeat that: no warrant, no judge, no legal authorization, just a directive from the feds. Now, Mr. Zeldin, who's with the EPA, says he wasn't behind the decision, but he was made aware after it happened. That alone raises serious red flags. Why is the FBI freezing funds at a private bank without judicial oversight? Is that how a constitutional republic operates? We are seeing more and more executive overreach, and no one is being held accountable. This is how banana republics function, not the United States of America. A day later, on February 18th, the criminal chief of the D.C. U.S. Attorney's Office resigned over this very freeze.
Sure.
Okay. So the first thing was a Biden EPA official.
Well, not right now. We can do this in a QRF because I'd like to get through some other questions. Later on March 6th, you also said that this was either a kickback, a theft, or graft, or all of the above on Fox News. And if you could also put into the timeline of what you knew and when you knew it, that March 6th statement. I would be grateful to that, about that. Now, somewhere between March 9th and 10th, there was a series of emails between EPA and DOJ in which the top career EPA attorney, a gentleman named Jim Payne, warned that there were significant legal vulnerabilities with the Citibank freeze. Do you know what those significant legal vulnerabilities were that he was referring to?
I could speculate that if you're going through what is claimed to be a breach of contract, and the Court of Federal Claims, which is the court that would actually have jurisdiction over it, not a district court, inside there they would determine, one, if there was a breach of contract, and then two, they would decide on damages.
So it could be not on the merits, but just on the venue, on the appropriate court.
Well, I'm just saying the way that process would go, so this $20 billion went to 8 pass-through entities. A little over $3 billion of that actually was dispersed. The rest has been frozen. All the grants have been terminated.
Let me ask you about that, because my time is getting a little bit short here. I'm sorry to cut you off, but the New York Times has reported that one of the grantees has been told it no longer needs to comply with a February 20 subpoena, suggesting that the investigation is closing. Is the investigation closing?
Again, you should ask that question. Any question that you have as far as Justice Department as an agency should be directed to the Justice Department. It would
You were not
spend
involved in all of that.
No, I'm focused on the EPA.
Okay.
And I think this would be
focusing
great
on the
for us
EPA in my last seconds, DOJ lawyers representing EPA admitted in the Circuit Court of Appeals that they are not accusing anybody of fraud. That's their quote, not accusing anybody of fraud. And EPA in that courtroom specifically reiterated several times that no grantee had engaged in any fraud, waste, or abuse. Do you stand by the statements of your lawyers in that courtroom?
I would love to be able to go through the list of all of the waste and abuse that I'm aware of, but it seems like you and your colleagues want anything other than for me to go through the list of evidence.
You're more than welcome to submit a list of all the evidence, but when I only have 5 minutes, I don't want you to...
You don't want me to go through the list of evidence.
You
You just
eat
want to
up-
say that
you
we
eat
don't
up-
have any,
you eat up-
right?
No,
You
no,
just want to
so
say we
stop.
don't have any, and
Let me
then
stop
say
you.
I don't
Hold
have
on,
time to
hold
actually go through the
on,
list.
hold on. Let me stop you right there. It's not me saying that you don't have any. It's your lawyers in a court proceeding saying you don't have
Allow me
any.
to talk through it.
So I'll take it as a question for the record because our time is up. But please, give me your list. I'd be more than happy to
I
review
already
it.
sent you over a lot of it, but I guess you haven't read it.
All right, here we go.
Okay, guys. Now, you don't just walk away from a powerful position like that unless something seriously unethical or illegal is going on. And yet, when asked if he knew why the attorney resigned, Zeldin says he read about it in the newspaper. That's the extent of the EPA's oversight on $20 billion in taxpayer funds? Come on. We also learned that U.S. Attorney Martin tried to get a judge to approve this freeze, and the magistrate denied it. So what did they do? They went ahead anyway. Let me be crystal clear. That is a direct circumvention of the judicial branch. That is a mockery of our checks and balances. This is how regimes act, not constitutional governments. On February 23rd, Mr. Zeldin went on record saying that, in his opinion, this whole scheme is criminal. Now, the left and the Senate Democrats grilled him over that statement. But I ask you, based on what we've seen so far, was he wrong? They froze billions of dollars without a warrant. A top prosecutor resigned in protest. A judge rejected the freeze request, and it was ignored. That's criminal behavior by any fair measure. This isn't about politics. This is about protecting our republic. Then on March 6th, Zeldin goes on Fox News and says what we're all thinking, that this stinks of kickbacks, theft, graft, or all of the above. And just like that, the left starts panicking. They want a timeline, a paper trail, proof. But when Zeldin starts listing the waste and abuse he's aware of, they try to shut him down. You see, they don't want the truth. They want silence. Behind closed doors, between March 9th and 10th, emails were exchanged between EPA and DOJ officials. One of the EPA's top career attorneys warned there were significant legal vulnerabilities with the fund freeze. That means they knew they were on shaky ground, legally speaking, but they did it anyway. Again, I ask you, who are these people accountable to? Zeldin says $20 billion in taxpayer funds went to 8 pass-through entities, and only $3 billion had been disbursed before everything was frozen. That means $17 billion is still in limbo, and all the grants were terminated. What happened to that money? Who approved these grants? Who was auditing them? Nobody wants to answer that. The New York Times, of all places, reported that one of the grantees has now been told they no longer have to comply with a subpoena. That suggests the DOJ is quietly backing out of the investigation. Let me guess why: because the optics are bad and the legal case was weak. Or worse, they knew there was no fraud, and the freeze was political from the start. In open court, DOJ lawyers, representing the EPA, flat out admitted they're not accusing anyone of fraud. Let that sink in. No fraud, no waste, no abuse, according to them. And yet, $20 billion is tied up. Careers have been ruined, grants terminated, and reputations destroyed. This isn't justice. This is bureaucratic sabotage. In the final exchange, Zeldin tries to defend himself and says he's ready to present a list of the waste and abuse he's aware of. And what do the senators say? We don't want to hear it. Of course they don't, because this was never about fraud. This was about power. It was about control. It was about sending a message to anyone who dares to speak out or try to fix the broken system from within. Viewers, we need to stay awake. We need to speak out. And we need to hold these unelected bureaucrats accountable before they burn down what's left of our republic. Mr. Zeldin is not the villain here. He's the whistleblower. And the fact that they're trying to silence him should tell you everything you need to know. If you believe in truth, transparency, and the Constitution, share this video. Let your friends and neighbors know what's happening. Because if they can get away with this now, just imagine what they'll do next. God bless you, and God bless the United States of America. Zeldin admitted cancellations were due to administration priorities rather than project quality. Many suspect this reflects a deeper bias against rural, working-class communities. If you enjoyed the video and want to stay ahead with the latest uncensored analysis, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe. Your support means the world and helps us bring you even more in-depth. See you on the next episode of The American Enigma.